My name is Flory-Barnes. I'm a bassist and composer and barista and gallivanteur and enjoyer of life and host of other things. I say, if you want to know me, like everything I feel about the world and life, just watch me play. I think my interest is in I use the word well-being, and that interest is in the well-being of myself and others. I think that's one of the draws to performing and creating work and spending time with people, finding out what's real in people. In my personal relationships with people and how I surrender to music, it's ultimately one. That's what I'm going for in my interactions with people. So that to strip down the barriers. I feel like as a composer, the way music has made itself available to me, I've been able to bring all these different worlds of people, worlds of music, and then through a composition, through a certain group, I can show what I'm experiencing in the world authentically. I was drawn to music without knowing it. It was, I remember my grandfather who played like old ragtime and blues piano. And I remember being 3 or 4 years old and going by the piano and not knowing what the sounds that were coming out were, but being very interested in the sounds. And I remember being at home in the summer before 8th grade watching this Red Hot Chili Peppers video, Under the Bridge. And I saw Flea playing the bass, and I remember the bass line really resonating with me. And summer after that, my mom got me an electric bass. It wasn't something that just sat around. It's like once I started playing, I would always go downstairs and play. And then shortly after that, I started playing the acoustic bass. Garfield High School had then and still has an outstanding music program, both in jazz and classical music. At the time I couldn't read any music, I could barely play the bass, but I went and auditioned for the orchestra. I remember the orchestra teacher saying I didn't have enough chops to be in the orchestra, which was true at the time, but it sort of leveled things out. Took a couple of lessons and stayed in the orchestra and was like the last of 9 basses and kind of developed this haphazard way of using a garage band mentality for playing in the orchestra. I didn't read, so I would listen to the music, learn the parts by ear, and then play. And I think that helped in sort of what's come to be now as an adaptability in different musical situations. There is a great gift to just being able to read, but then you are limited by what's on the page. And I feel like having that exposure to just being very visceral and responsive to music naturally, and then adding maybe symbols to help me communicate certain things, and that's helped as a composer.
When we go between these 2 chords, it opens up. Okay, and that's just how it's there. Exactly. Awesome.
I have musicians who've been trained, and I have ear musicians, and the combination of the 2 creates a very alive process and a very live product. When someone says you can't bring these 2 things together, well, you can write a piece of music and do that, and show connection, show inclusion, show cohesion between seemingly different ideas or different idioms that may not seem to go together. The projects I'm involved with are Veda Beauty, The Teaching, Span Siendo, Industrial Revelation, and a project that I'm starting in collaboration with Ahamaluo, which is called the New Seattle Orchestra. We had our first concert featuring our compositions and then arrangements of two local hip-hop artists, Gabriel and Ross Ion of Common Market. We're not trying to limit ourselves to jazz or classical music or art music or composed music or free improv. It's all there, and it all can be traced. And because it's all music, it's all trying to do the same thing, and so there's this intensity brought to that. One show I had my 80-year-old grandmother and an unborn baby and everything in between. And I bring this up because, you know, when you break down musical boundaries, well, certain music is associated with certain lifestyles. So these type of people go to an orchestra show, or these kind of guys go to a hip-hop show or a rock show. And what happens if you then bring all these different influences together? Well, who's going to show up? Well, a lot of people will show up, a lot of different people with seemingly different stories, different conditions in the world, but they're connecting. Right now, I'm planting seeds for certain types of collaboration with modern dance and freestyle, b-boy hip-hop dance, and then my compositions. And I see having work like this done on so many larger scales and having both the town itself and the artist involved helping nurturing this kind of collaboration. Because then I feel like everything people want from a move to New York or wherever will be here. I support myself both by playing in the groups and projects I love to do, but then also do freelance work from everything from jazz vocalist and different bands around town, covering a number of genres. Work at a Cafe Solstice in the U District, and both of the owners of that place are very supportive and very nurturing. I mean, the majority of people who work there are involved in the arts on some level, in creation on some level. So between the two jobs, between doing music, you know, 3 to 5 times a week, and then having the coffee gig, it works out well. The artistic process is, in all things, it can be aligned with how you deal with things in life. I remember there was this period of time where there was this dear friend that I had sort of intense romantic feelings for that weren't returned. And so I remember this bus ride home, just singing this melody in my head, and then going to the piano and then singing the melody and playing these chords that went with it, and there was the tune. And for me, it's a very beautiful tune I like hearing and playing now that almost has nothing to do with the direct situation. But at the same time, without the situation, the music isn't born. That acknowledgement of simple things, I think, flows into my work as a composer, as an artist, as a person. Simple things like good bourbon, a good conversation, good cup of coffee, good food. I like the term simplexity oftentimes, where you can convey a very complex thing, but through simple means. I think in my orchestral work it's the same. I may layer a bunch of simple elements and then they end up sounding complex and intense, but in a certain technical understanding, they're simple. It's the same in life when you take the simplest thing and find the depth with it and stay with it long enough. and you find the presence and the depth that's in everything, well, then more joy flows in, and that joy flows into what you do. And so for me, it's kind of this constant cycle of enjoying the fullness of life, if you will, and then how that's brought through my music. What makes me happy is when people recognize, and even myself recognize, being alive and what a gift that is. When through some music I create or that comes through me, I remind somebody about that.